Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Faffing with Friends. I'm joined by my co-hosts,
Ivaylo
and Joe.
Amazing. There we go. Today, we will be tackling a fascinating, scary, spooky subject, and that is cryptids. Now, for those of you that don't know, cryptids are sort of like our modern mythological creatures. They're weird, spooky monsters or creatures or happenings that we have that have been recorded and that people will tell you about.
I have two more things real quick. So in year 5, we went on a trip to Whitney, which is where Dracula lands when he gets to Britain.
Uh-huh.
And it was basically a trip around Dracula because we were reading Dracula in year 5 or year 6. I can't remember which it was. I think it was year 6, actually. Anyway, we go with my school and we stay at Sneaton Castle for a few nights. And so we were given rooms and there were about 4 kids to each room. Obviously, we were segregated. It was just boys on one side and girls on the other side. So the first night, it was me and 3 other of my friends. And the room we were staying in had a window facing the greenhouses that the castle had. And the castle was run by nuns. A convent of nuns was just built right next to the castle. Nowadays, you can hire the castle for wedding venues. Anyway, so I was just reading a book, and I was on the bed closest to the window at the time.
Yeah.
Before I moved to the bunk bed, which was furthest away afterwards. But I started hearing weird noises coming from the greenhouses. So I go and look outside, and obviously they told us to go to sleep, but we were just up because we were boys, you know. So I'm looking outside and I see someone in a white suit just walking around in the greenhouse, and I'm like, what the fuck? So I told my friend, I said, what the fuck is that guy doing out there? Is that Dracula or something? So they all come, scurrying to the window around me and then just looking out the window and like, shit, who the fuck is that outside? So we're all trying to keep it quiet because if the teachers find out that, we're still awake, we get in trouble. So anyway, one of my friends convinces everyone, oh, it's Dracula. And then before you know it, like this room has gone to the rooms across where they're like, they think we've sighted Dracula, right? So everyone is coming into our rooms to see if there's actually Dracula there. And then suddenly the deputy head teacher who was on the trip with us hears there's noise coming from the kid's bedroom. She comes rushing to the corridor. So we all get into bed and I get into the bunk bed, which is furthest away from the window.
Oh no.
Everybody pretends they're asleep. But since I was the last person to get into bed and had very little time before she opened the door to turn around and pretend I'm asleep, I'm facing her as she opens the door.
Oh no.
And what do? Instead of closing my eyes and pretending I'm fast asleep, I go, good morning. And she goes, no, it's not good morning. And she has I got a great telling. Oh, that was a hilarious sign. But anyway, we think we might have seen Dracula in a white suit wandering around the greenhouses, but we were like 10 or 11, so
I don't think it would be Dracula because, as we know, he never actually came to England. But that's actually that's a fact. I think it also it gives us something that we think about with this stuff, which is, have you noticed that a lot of sightings always happen around buildings or areas of ghosts specifically?
Yeah. Where
it absolutely allows your imagination to run wild, where it almost encourages to think about these things.
I have a story about it. You mentioned it. I mean, first of all, I just want to say I haven't been as lucky as you guys to experience supernatural hauntings like that. Or maybe unlucky. Who knows?
Yes. Yeah, I was going to say, so lucky. I love being spooked.
Nah. But you mentioned how some ghosts are absolutely linked to their building, like to their place. Mm-hmm. One of London's most infamous stories in cryptids is obviously linked to the Tower of London. My favorite place. Hey, Tower of London, shout out if you're listening. Mm-hmm. It's your boy. Unban me, please. Unban me, please. But yeah, it's apparently the ghost of Arbella Stewart that haunts the tower. Now, she was a princess. Had a miserable life. Obviously, she was locked up and she passed away in the tower. And apparently, the room in which she passed away, women aren't allowed to enter that room because any woman who's entered that room experiences extreme shortage of breath and a force apparently pushing her out. So that room in the tower is specifically just linked so only men can access it, which on one hand is incredibly misogynistic. On the other hand, if there's an evil woman spirit there intent on killing all women who enter the chamber, then all I'm saying, but, I'm glad you mentioned the fact that ghosts are very, very much tied to their place. And that's another difference with the cryptids. Like, I feel like cryptids can cover a lot more ground. Obviously, we know Nessie is obviously tied to Loch Ness, but...
Yeah, but a lot of them are just country.
Yeah, like, I doubt Mothman has one, like,
bigger
tree.
than a country.
Yeah, I doubt Mothman has, like, one tree.
Yeah, no, Mothman does not have a tree, but he does have Point Pleasant, which is in West Virginia.
Exactly.
But, no, obviously, if you believe in ghosts, right, or spirits, the Tower of London would have such a stupid amount of ghosts and spirits, with the amount of people killed and executed just under Henry VIII alone. Jesus, you have like 5,000 ghosts spooking those halls. So yeah, no, obviously, because we link like ghosts and spirits specifically to locations based on, who has died here and has tragic things happen here, we see these sightings and these things happen a lot more around areas where, either a lot of people have died or they're linked spiritually to death, like graveyards or churches. I also like to think, though, that part of this reason is because those are the links in our own brain. So we're a lot more likely to, if we make something in our own mind that we see, to see it in places that our mind will think, this is where these things would be. This is where I would find something like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, bro. Absolutely, 100%.
I was going to say, I want to move on from British specific and talk about a few more international, worldwide ones. But first, I do want to mention one more that is probably my favorite cryptid in the entire UK. Mm-hmm. Now, we know that there's a bunch in Scotland. Scotland is big of cryptids. It's probably the most because of... I guess Celtic culture in Scotland and Ireland survived a lot better than England overall, so it passed on easier and evolved. So I was going to first mention the Big Grey Man of Macdui. Ooh. Now, this is almost like...
What a name!
A mix. Yeah, it's almost a mix between a ghost sighting and something akin to Bigfoot. Yeah, there's, people have gone to this mountain, the highest peak, the second highest peak in Scotland, I think second highest in the UK even. They've spotted, or at times heard, this really large figure's footsteps behind them as they walk, but out of sync with their own, so it couldn't be their own steps. And because this mountain, you've seen Scottish peaks, they're very foggy certain times of year, very low visibility. It is such a perfect area, the Highlands of Scotland, for things like this to happen, to be seen, to grow as a myth and as a cryptid. Because, of course, right, what is a better place to see something or hear something than a place known for its mist and fog half the year around, and the echoing of sound and the way it carries across a mountain?
Yeah.
That's such a fascinating thing, because, it immediately makes sense to you. If this isn't real, why people would have imagined or seen it. And if it is real, this is such a perfect locale for something to be wondering, the mountains of the country. Yeah, I love that. I love that entire cryptid story. One more super worth mentioning is the Black Shuck, just because of how traditional it is to this country. Now, the Black Shuck, or just Shuck, they're black hounds or dogs that get seen as omens of things to happen, or almost if you see one, you might die, right? Like, that's the myth. And what I really like about them is it is arguable that the myth and the story of the cryptid, the Black Shuck, is what inspired the Hound of Baskerville story for Sherlock. And I really like that. I like that, we have authors who took these myths and legends, ran with them, and turned them into something completely different. And we still have these cryptids. You still hear about Black Shuck sightings to this day.
Yeah, even J.K. Rowling literally, I think, took this in Prison of Azkaban to refer to Sirius Black as the Black Hound.
Oh, yes.
We also have a huge number of, huge animals here in the UK. We obviously mentioned the shuck, but... apparently, people just see huge, giant wildcats in Britain.
Yes, we've had many sightings of jaguars, lions, tigers, which should not be free or exist in this climate.
Two of the most famous ones being Beast of Exmoor in Devon and Somerset, and you have also the Beast of Bodmin Moor in Cornwall, which are all pretty near. So apparently that side of the UK is just filled with huge, giant wildcats. Apparently there's a name for them. They're called phantom cats, which is even better. Okay, I'm down.
Yeah, I very much like that. I'm
down
sold.
If we have that. But before we move on, I do want to bring an exclusive London myth.
Ooh, go
We do
on.
have to. I've already brought up Westminster Abbey and Tower, but Spring-Heeled Jack. If you boys have heard of
Spring-heeled
Spring-heeled Jack, he is actually a Victorian cryptid and a Victorian legend. I don't know the connection between him and Jack the Ripper, but, you know, people just slap the name Jack on every creepy guy and it's just like...
Yeah, I mean, Jack Frost.
Yeah, Jack,
Jack is a very common name.
Yeah.
Jack of all trades, hey! Okay, sorry. Anyways, sorry. Spring-heeled Jack, he is just a monster, apparently. He's a fire-breathing man with wings, and he has the Mercury shoes, which by I mean, like, he has, like, little wings on his heels, and he jumps across the London rooftops, going around, scaring people, breathing destruction and fire on them. You know, it's just like, it's a classic Victorian tale. I feel like it's it kind of embodies the views of that period. It's almost grotesque to the point of parody, but at the same time,
it reaches a point where it's quite silly when you think of all the features attributed to this one cryptid. It's like, it looks like a mishmash of everything people were spooked by at the time.
Yeah, but you would still shit yourself if you saw it, though. So,
well, yeah, obviously, but that's why it's also funny, because it's like every scary feature we can think of, stick it on to this one.
Yeah.
Okay, before I know we still want to talk about England because we live here. It's fun. The UK is great. I want to move on before we run out of time in this episode to some of the more famous, internationally, worldwide known cryptids.
Indeed.
And the first one I want to start with, because it is such a well-known cryptid, so well-known in all media, in all countries almost, Bigfoot. Sasquatch.
Yay.
What do you guys think about Sasquatch, Bigfoot?
Sasquatch and Bigfoot, man. I think they're like your Cryptid 101. Absolutely, when people think that, it's either Nessie or Bigfoot. I think Bigfoot is the poster child the way Nessie is for the UK. There's been a lot of theories regarding its origins. My favorite theory about Bigfoot is that Bigfoot is the missing link. I think that is something...
yes. I do like that one quite a lot.
I do think that Bigfoot being the missing link kind of just fills the gap between, our common ancestor with where we came from and stuff like that.
But I mean, you brought up the whole comparison with Nessie, it being the poster child of cryptids, mainly in North America. And not only are they, but also even to the point of there's one famous picture that everyone knows of Bigfoot. Yes, Bigfoot walking through the wood looking at the camera. And everyone's talked about that picture for decades now. It's great.
Can we just complain? One thing I want to complain before we
Go on.
Every single piece of cryptid media looks like it's been taken out with a potato. It just looks
so bad.
There's a whole meme about everything. Bro, we're in 2021. We have 4K. Why are we still getting these potato pictures? Please.
Yeah, no, the more you have ghost sightings and cryptid sightings in the modern world and they still look like trash, it is actually infuriating, because you're like, bro, my phone can film better than whatever you're using at that point.
That's the thing. I don't think these cryptids can exist on evidence.
Well, yeah, so obviously that's the point, right? Yeah. That's why the video footage is still so bad and blurry and pictures are out of focus. It's because if you saw it looking as what it actually is, half the time you'd see a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
And it'd be like, great. Because we're on Bigfoot, I wanted to talk about something I find hilarious, and that is all the Bigfoot-centric shows in the US. Now, there's Mountain Monsters, where a bunch of crazy gun-toting hillbillies are hunting Bigfoot, and a lot of other quote-unquote cryptids around West Virginia. And it is, I believe there's an episode where one of them shoots another one by accident because they're being attacked by Bigfoot or something. And it's just, I love these shows because you have this entire genre, finding Bigfoot, ghost hunters, all these shows built upon these cryptids and myths and mythological monsters and spooks. And it's so hilarious. I only watch them because of how blatantly bad and fake most of them are. You can tell when they're being acted. You can tell when they're setting something up, and it's just noises and shaking in the woods, or someone's like, "Oh, something touched my arm," and it's like, "Whoa!" It's just they're the worst. I find them hilarious to watch.
Creature features, yeah.
When I come across any of these shows, if I have a television on somewhere, I leave them running just because they make me laugh with how hilarious they can be.
Yeah. But yeah, Bigfoot's iconic, bro. Bigfoot is the absolute icon of cryptids. It's been...
my favorite thing about Bigfoot is you have almost a version everywhere in the world of Bigfoot, around Nepal and a lot of the, Asian mountainous region, you have... Yetis, which are just the abominable snowman. It's almost like this is a Bigfoot adapted for this environment. And it's really cool because you have like almost a common link where you see like, yeah, everyone thought of this cryptid. Everyone came up with this one. I believe even Australia has one, though the name escapes me
bunyip,
right now.
but that's something different. So I don't know if you mean that, but
No, I think they have
the
like
yowie,
a version
the yowie,
of
the
Bigfoot.
yowie.
Yowies,
Yeah, they
yes,
have
the
They have
yowie.
yowie. I was thinking of
That's
another
the
cryptid.
one.
I was thinking of the bunyip, which is another Australian cryptid, which is
So yeah, even Australia has a version of Sasquatch, a version of the Bigfoot, the yowie, and I like that. I like that it's such a universal cryptid that you can find it almost anywhere in the world, you know?
yeah, it's insane. Yeah, I feel like with Nessie, Bigfoot,
Oh, yeah.
everyone knows them. Like, you can ask someone on the street, what's your first thought of a cryptid? They're gonna say one of those. Like,
Yeah.
it's 100% accurate.
And I mean, we have like others that are, you know, more other places. We have one that's just legendary, and that's the Kraken.
Ah,
everyone knows
That's what
about
I
the
wanted to bring
Kraken.
up.
The
Yeah,
Kraken.
the Kraken, because that's international. It's supposed to be. It's not limited to one regional area or anything.
Transatlantic,
It's the bane-
I believe you should go.
It's the bane. It's the bane of all sailors because it could pretty much travel anywhere, right? And it might have
And
been.
it makes perfect sense that it becomes a completely worldwide thing because sailors travel.
That's
and
right.
So does their word. So of course,
Exactly. That's what I wanted to get to because the whole idea that in Pirates of the Caribbean, Davy Jones can only set foot on port once every 10 years. But that's the idea that all of these myths get spread because these sailors make port wherever they go, and then they spread these myths at the tavern or wherever they're selling their goods. But it also, I mean, what do you guys think? Do you reckon that the Kraken might somehow be related to the sea serpents of the old?
Oh, I mean, I find the sea fascinating because we all know that the depths of the ocean are the least explored place on the planet. So when it comes to both believability but also the possibility of things like this, it is so much more possible for like sea-based and ocean-based cryptids to be more realistic than the ones we talk about in like areas where it wouldn't make sense that people don't see it constantly. Because, you know, the deeper you go down in the ocean, we find new fish that wash up on shores every other week. We see like a picture of a new horrible abomination that washed up that no one's ever seen. That's adapted to the deep sea where they don't have light and, you know, the pressure's insane. So you never know, like, what could really be down there. I mean, we have, it's giant squids.
Giant squids,
Yeah, giant
And we
squids.
know that in the past, there are, like, reports and sightings, you know, believable ones from, like, actual merchant ships and military ships of giant squids so large that they could wrap around parts of certain boats and ships and just drag them.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's terrifying, but it's also, out of all the places physically possible for things like this to exist, yeah, I'd 100% say the ocean is the most likely.
Well, we have fossils of giant creatures existing in the ocean.
Exactly.
So it's not far from reality. I mean, like you said, the depths are so deep that we're not able to explore them enough to know what's going on down there. So a lot of it has to be filled in with our subconscious, right? Yeah. So this idea that, okay, you've got sailors who probably have scurvy out on the ocean. So they're malnourished. So of course they're going to hallucinate, and they might even be sleep deprived. It's not so much seeing things. I think what happens is the gap between falling asleep and having a dream gets shortened when you're really sleep deprived. So your imagination starts to fire off, and you start to imagine a whole lot of things that you don't really exist in the real world. I like this idea of our subconscious filling in the gaps of what we don't know.
Absolutely.
And I think as science begins to discover a lot of things about just our nature and the nature of the world, a lot of these cryptids become more accepted as myth. But the ocean, because we know very little about it still, and we're still discovering new species all the time, it's much more believable to believe that some sort of creature exists in the deep. Because, you know, who in the middle of the ocean would dare to either jump in for a swim or even dip their toes in, knowing that at some point some creature is going to start nibbling on it? And what if it's not just a shark?
What if it's the Kraken? You know?
Yes, exactly.
But like, I absolutely agree with you. I think that you mentioned the cryptid in itself. Davy Jones is the cryptid of the sea. Like, he's a cryptid of the sea. He's a spirit of the sea. Like, you can make that argument any day of the week. But, you know, I absolutely love sea creatures. I do think that that's the majority of the origin of... I mean, life originated from it. So if life can originate from the sea, what else can originate from the sea? You know what I mean? Like...
Yeah, what else decided not to crawl out?
A giant monster decided not to crawl out. But I did want to abandon the sea for a bit. I do want to ask any of you if... I imagine Lawrence would know more about this because he actually mentioned Japanese cryptids Japanese legends, something like that. Yokai. Do you guys know anything about that?
Yeah, actually, I'm a big fan of Japanese.
Go on, tell me
myths.
something. Tell me.
So I love stuff like the culture almost they have based around curses
Yes.
and how a lot of their cryptids and ghosts and oni, which are demons, their version of demons, they all operate based on like grudges and curses and lingering bad emotions almost. Does that make sense? I like that because it's very different from how we explain away a lot of cryptids and ghosts and legends in the rest of the world. And you have these horrifying legends they have there of like ghosts that you cannot beat. There is no way around. There is no way to, reason with Oni or make a deal because they're driven solely by their negative emotions and there's nothing you can do, which is what, makes horror films like The Ring and The Grudge that were so successful, so scary, because no one escapes in those films. No one survives by the end. Everyone dies. You can never beat these Japanese like curses and
I'm very glad you mentioned The Ring because there's a lot of destructive female yokai. Junji Ito's best story, Tommy, is just a combination of all the yokai together. And it is absolutely terrifying global horror. And again, you mentioned the Japanese cryptids and the yokai. They're just they're destructive and powerful. Like, I'm terrified of them. Like, if I get a yokai on me, just count me out, bro. Just count me out. I'm just gonna lie down and die. Like, but they're not all bad spirits. I do one of my favorite spirits of Japan, most famously represented in Princess Mononoke, the Kodama. I absolutely love the Kodama.
Yes.
They're absolutely cute, adorable. The spirits of the forest, they symbolize a healthy environment. They symbolize growth, nature, the beginning of life, the beginning of spring. They often give advice to travelers. So it's not all doom and gloom with Japanese cryptids. But yeah, the Kodama is just one of my favorite cryptids. I absolutely love it. And with the upcoming global crisis of climate change, maybe we're going to kill the Kodama, but probably not.
That's
please.
a fun thought to have near the end
please
of this episode.
don't kill the Kodama. Save, recycle, please. The Kodama are dying in Japan.
Joe, do you have anything else you would like to add?
Yeah. So we talked about the Kraken as this almost universal global cryptid. We also talked about ghosts and perhaps even these ideations of the Bigfoot around the world. But something that you don't have to go looking for in nature or at the ocean or anywhere else, but under your bed, is the Boogeyman.
Oh.
Now, the Boogeyman has always been this personification for me when I was younger of fear and darkness, because my parents used that, right? Like, if you don't go to bed right now, the Boogeyman will come and get you. Even when I was left home alone, when my parents used to go to work, the reason why I stayed up to watch Most Haunted until I fell asleep in front of the TV, so my parents would come home and take me upstairs, was because I didn't want to go sleep in my room, because I was afraid that the Boogeyman would come out from under my bed or out of a closet and haunt me or do whatever.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of, when I watched Monsters, Inc., and I was maybe 9 at the time, that really played on my fears because, and I think that was the purpose, because I was like, okay, that's it. I don't want to ever sleep in my room ever again. So I think
you brought up something fascinating, and that is a lot of our fear, our most natural, like most simple fear, is of the dark because it's unknown, right?
That's it.
I think all of us, I know I was as a child, were afraid of the dark, right?
Yeah.
Like actual pitch black, I cannot see a thing in there. And because I was raised away from a city, that's what every nighttime looked like outside your house. And I found the dark terrifying because, it gives rise to these things. You look at it and it's like, there could be anything in there. I can't see, of course.
I do want to finish on one very interesting topic. We've all talked about our experiences as children with cryptids and ghosts. There is the widespread belief that children are indeed more prone to seeing ghosts and seeing cryptids and that kind of stuff. Now, I don't know where it originally comes from. Maybe it's because obviously we use these stories to tell children and it becomes memorable. Children are scared of the dark and children are scared of the boogeyman. But maybe there is a connection. Maybe, Joe, you mentioned how you saw a Commander ghost and then you saw Dracula when you were a kid, right? So maybe there's
Right.
a connection. Maybe the whole Bruce Willis meme of, I see dead people kind of rings true.
I don't know. I always put it down to kids have the most active
Yeah,
emotions,
obviously,
so
but
of
come on,
course.
humor me, man. Humor me,
Well,
Ivaylo really wants to believe. He's feeling that X-Files theme playing right now.
Yeah. But, I'm just saying,
there might be something to it, but I'll tell you one experience I had as an adult, right? And then I'll tell you, by the end, you realize what I mean. So, obviously, back in Sheffield, we lived on a council estate, which was literally at the top of a hill. And because it was so high up, even though we had woods around us, we'd rarely got foxes or anything of that sort around. So, until we moved to London, I had never actually heard what a fox sounds like. That's crazy, right? So it was one night I was going to the shed at the end of our garden, and our garden is pretty long, the length of it. So it takes some time. It takes maybe about a minute to get from one point to the other. And it gets really dark, especially at night. We have lights, but once you get far enough, you just can't see anything. So I go to the shed, I open the door, and I get inside to grab whatever it was my mum had asked me to get. And then I just hear this really harrowing, creepy sound
I can imagine
outside of the door. And I'm like, fuck. I think I almost pissed myself because I was like, I don't know what the fuck is outside that door. I do not want to go outside until it's gone. And
foxes make a horrifying
They do.
noise.
They do. You know what I mean.
I genuinely thought a woman was being murdered the first time I heard it.
Exactly, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, it
So
was-
I stand there.
And, I mean, they're really cute once you know that it's the foxes making that noise, because you see one looking at you and it goes, "Wah!"
Oh, well, that's the
no.
thing. You mentioned exactly what I was about to say. I stand there for a whole minute, right? Hoping that whatever it was would go away. Now, it must have thought I had food or something, because why else would it approach the door? You stupid fox, why are you trying to scare the shit out of me? So I see the reflection of its eyes outside the door, and it's pitch black. But I think it got scared and ran away. And when I came home, when I said to my mom, I said, it was this noise. I don't know what it was. I saw eyes and she said, oh, calm down. It's just a fox. And I was like, how do you know it's a fox? So yeah, that's my
the
adult
scariest
story.
cryptid on this episode has been the fox. Hell yeah.
The
What
fox.
does the fox say,
What does the fox
boys?
say? Yes, exactly.
Okay. No.
Well, ladies and
Yeah.
gentlemen, I hope you have enjoyed our cryptid special episode. And if you want to hear more of us talking about cryptids, you can reach us on Instagram, Twitter, just comment on YouTube, really. We are on all the platforms. Joe, take it
We
away.
have plenty more cryptids.
You've said it all. We have so many more cryptids, guys. So if you really want another part to this episode, just please do actually let us know, because you guys are great at listening, but not so much telling us what you want. If you tell us what you want, we'll give it to you. So do that, please. And Lawrence has covered everything else. So thank you, both of you guys.
Don't forget Cousin Randy. Cousin Randy.
Oh,
is important.
Send us to everyone, your friends, family, your third cousin 5 times removed, Randy, that you haven't spoken to since you were born. I'm sure he'll know who you are. And I gotta say thank you to these guys, because this is coming out weeks after when we're recording it, but I'm on a really tight schedule for several reasons this week, and so are Lawrence and Ivaylo, but they were so accommodating to recording now.
Hell yeah.
All right, it's been Joe.
It's been Ivaylo.
And Lawrence.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.